What's the difference between MAC and Maybelline or any brand you are obsessed with? It's not the ingredients, it's the customer. Both brands are widely successful, but their branding, positioning, even where they're sold, are completely different. And here's the part that nobody tells you. Big brands don't build by accident. They don't guess, they don't rely on trial and error. They use strategy, they use data, and they use precision. And if you don't know your numbers, you truly don't know your customer. Welcome to Build an Obsession Brand, the podcast where we break down the science behind brand building so you can compete with the big brands and turn your beloved product into a household name. Let's dive in. Hey Allison, welcome to the Build an Obsession Brand podcast. I'm so excited to have you. We've been planning this for over a year and we're finally making it happen. So thank you for saying yes to coming to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know people usually are like, tell me about yourself. And I was like, how do I make it different this time? And I want you to tell me, what was the moment that you realized that you were supposed to do this?
Yeah, it's kind of gross. It's kind of a gross story. Can I tell it? Okay.
Yes, go for it.
So I can remember it so clearly. I was back at my buying desk, which, if anybody's worked in retail, like some of these buying desks are wedged between metro shelves and, in this like dusty, dimly lit backstock area. My chair was literally like two milk crates stacked upside down on top of each other. And we had this sample box that lived above the buyer desk. And this sample box is where anytime a brand would swing by and drop off samples for us, my team would just put it in the sample box. And then, the team of buyers would review those samples, every 2 months or so. So I went to move the sample box and it kind of was like wobbly and tippy. And Maureen, this disgusting container of rancid yogurt fell on my head. And we have a sample box for refrigerated samples that lives in the fridge.
Yes.
However,
should be there.
The person, whoever collected it, they were doing their job. They didn't think that it was refrigerated, whatever it was. The yogurt, dairy product, whatever it was, went into the non-refrigerated sample box, and I got rancid dairy all over my head. It was absolutely disgusting. Oh, no. And in that moment, I was like, I was built for more. I need to get out from behind the scenes of grocery. But, I'm laughing, but it really is it highlighted a bigger disconnect for me where brands were making, my golden mistake of retail, which is just swing by, just drop off samples. Brands are doing this left and right. And it really was this aha for me that there's a disconnect between retail best practices and what brands think they need to do to get on shelves. And that I could be the person who bridges that gap and makes that information more accessible to early stage founders. So yeah, that disgusting dairy incident was really a turning point.
Thank you for doing that. And it's so funny. I know you're on the retail side, but I am on the other side of helping people position themselves to get into retail. And I get this question of, should I sample? Should I sample? I'm anti-sampling, and I learned this in corporate. So for you to say that the biggest mistakes people make is sampling is just amazing.
Yeah.
It just aligns.
It's interesting because I think, so let me just address the elephant in the room here.
Yes. I was going to say, talk to me about why sampling is something that you are.
Well, let's talk about why sampling is challenging. And also, let me just say that, Maureen, my background is in food and beverage. My company name is Food Biz Wiz. But at this point, having worked in CPG for almost 2 decades, I've worked with lots of brands outside of food and beverage category. So Maureen, I love that you bring that side of this conversation as well. So your listeners, whether they are in beauty or supplements or food or home goods or whatever it is,
fashion,
whatever it
whatever.
is, these best practices
Mhm.
apply. Okay, so sampling. Maureen, I see this. I'm curious if you do too, that founders are so passionate about their product, right? The product usually starts with passion, right? They're like, oh, my
Yes.
shampoo bars are so gentle on hair, or my nut butter is so delicious, or whatever it is, an obsession over your product. And so founders think that those wholesale buyers just need to try the product and they'll be
And
hooked.
they'll buy.
You and I are both shaking our heads here, right?
Yeah. That's not
It's
the
not the
case.
case, right? So buyers bring in products to help them with the financial goal of that category. So higher sales or
Yes.
higher margin, right? And so many of those product attributes, right? Effective, delicious, sustainable, better for you, smooth on skin, whatever it is, they're subjective. Right? Just because I
Yes.
think my
Very
thing's delicious
subjective.
doesn't mean you're going to think it's delicious. Just because this foundation looks great on me doesn't mean it's going to look great on you. It's all subjective.
Yep.
So
Yes.
instead, we really need to pitch those retail buyers, those wholesale buyers, with that picture of sales success first before we even talk about how awesome our products are. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of anti-sampling, or I'm hesitant around
Okay.
sampling. Is it the same reasons for you
Yes.
coming from
Yeah.
corporate?
For me, it's coming from corporate, it's the financial aspect of sampling that founders have really not thought about. Because to you, it's a sample, and I get why you're doing it because you want the buyer to try. You feel like, oh my God, if you try it, you will love it. Again, you said it's subjective. But for me, on the other side, as a strategist, I'm like, it's a financial
Totally.
cost. There's sizing included, there's manufacturing specs that have been included, but you have not accounted for that. And I do know when you're growing and scaling, your margins are thin, you're bootstrapping your way out of it. So you're technically giving away free product, but you don't know you're giving away
Yeah.
free
Right.
product
Because you think you have to do it.
because you
Yeah.
think you have to do it. And I'm like, the different ways to pitch and position your product without having to give away the actual
Yeah.
product,
Totally.
which is the part I feel like people
Totally,
miss.
Maureen. One of the things in my buying days, one of the things that was so important about getting samples
Mhm.
was just seeing how the product looks on our shelves. So you could give me an
Yes.
empty jar or an empty bag or an
Mhm.
empty cardboard box, right? Or, obviously
Mhm.
branded, your own branding, like finished product. But let's say you
Mhm.
make a line of 6 different flavors of jam. I don't need
Mhm.
6 full size jars of your jam, right? I just need to see what
Yes.
it looks like on my shelf. Is it going to physically fit on my shelf? Is it going to look good? Is
Mhm.
it going to be stable? How is it going to fit in my
Mhm.
category? So, yeah, there are lots of things
Mhm.
that we can do that aren't just sending product to buyers, especially not
Exactly.
just blind shipping product to buyers either. That just ends up in the sample box, it ends up in the abyss.
Because there's so many other brands that are doing the
Yeah,
exact same
don't do it.
thing, because even being in marketing and I'm creating new products or I'm trying category products, like the amount of boxes I sit with, I don't even
Totally.
try. If I do not know the product, I don't even bother
Totally.
trying.
And it's really sad too, right? Like if we think about it from the brand's perspective, like you said,
Yeah,
Maureen,
yeah,
that's a lot of money. Like
it's a
for
lot
someone
of
to
money.
not even try the samples. I mean, I even think
Yeah,
about like ordering from like Derm Store or whatever. I'm getting those little samples on every order.
hmm
And I'm like, I don't
hmm
use those samples. I'm not going
I
to put that,
don't.
I'm very particular about what goes on this face. I'm not going to put that random sample on my face. And it's just like a waste of money. Like, oh,
Exactly. I know. I can talk about sampling all day long, but what I want us to really talk about is how do we make sure the buyer actually tries the
mm,
product? Like, what do they need to say? What do they need to prepare? I know people talk about pitch decks, and then founders think it's this complicated thing that they have to put together. Can you summarize what
Yeah.
that is? What does it include? Where do they build it? Give it,
Yeah,
spill the
totally.
tea.
Okay. So here's where it is a little bit different based on industry and category and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, we have to realize, right, what we just said, where the buyer makes product decisions based on whether or not your product line is going to help the financials of that category, right? So we have to build a sales pitch that shows the buyer that we're going to do just that. Right. So again, we move away from this story about the brand, the story about the founder, the story about the product, how awesome you are. And instead, we build a sales pitch that is rooted in data. Tell me the data story that shows that your product is going to sell in this retailer, in this category, at this price point, in this pack size, in this bundle, whatever it is, whatever you're pitching. We have to see the numbers that support your case. So in my experience, Maureen, these buyers are so busy. And so a mistake that I see founders make is thinking that they've got to have a 15-page pitch deck that has the slide on the founder story, that has the comp chart of you versus other brands, that has the sourcing, the ingredient sourcing page and all of that. And while that can be helpful, depending on the size of the retailer that you're pitching, how far along in the pitch process you are, what I found to be the most effective way to open the conversation is to have a very short email that's got like an introduction, not to your brand, but like introduction to how you're going to sell in the category. Bullet point, proving your case, right? Like maybe selling, maybe something like, our product sells on average 26 units a week at XYZ retailer, right? Like, give me the numbers.
Yep.
And then we end that email with a very clear call to action, right? Like, I'd love to meet you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. and present our product line to you, right? Just say what you want to happen next rather than, so that's our product line. I think we'd be a really great fit for your shelves. Thanks for your consideration.
That's it.
Right? Like, we have to ask for what we want to happen next in the relationship. There's not time for the back and forth and the back and forth. And then, Maureen, with that really short data-driven email, we attach a sell sheet. That's what we call it in the food industry. It might be a line sheet, right? It's just like a double-sided, exactly, a double-sided piece of paper attachment that's got first, the front page is like sexy product photo, like a tagline, what it is, like really fast. I get what this product is. And the back shows all the product details, right? UPCs,
the QR code,
exactly,
the UPC,
exactly, size,
everything.
If you're using any sort of like broker or distributor, how people are ordering, shelf life, all of that sort of stuff. Still beautifully designed, right? It doesn't have to like look awful just because it's the details. It has to look on brand, but that 2-pager, plus we attach a price list so they know pricing right out of the gate. So again, we avoid the back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? So instead of sending that 15-page pitch deck where your product is just, you're bearing the lead of, hey, I want you to carry my product. We do that double-sided PDF and a really short sales email.
And so you talk about data a lot. What I want to really focus on is what KPIs matter to a buyer, and how can founders better align their businesses around those metrics?
Yeah.
Is it just sales? Is it velocity? Is it units?
So the buyers care about sell-through, right? Not that initial sell-in. Right. You landed on the shelf. Great. Now the work begins, right? So buyers want to know, just like you said, we think about velocity as in the item movement per SKU, per store, per week.
Okay, that's the one I
Yeah,
love.
right. Per SKU, per store,
Units
per
per
week.
store per week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anybody listening out there is like, wait, like how do I calculate that? Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It kind of depends. It depends where you're getting your
Mm-hmm.
data. If you're selling direct to a store, it's much easier to understand than if you're selling through a distributor who maybe isn't giving you that reporting, right? But you can
Yeah.
still like have a general sense of it. And this is why I always advocate for creating these relationships with your buyers so that you can literally ask them, right? You can, like,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you're selling in store and like things are going well, that buyer respects you, you've got that like beautiful relationship. You can say, hey lady, right, whatever her name is, hey Maureen,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing some competitive analysis of our product line and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get, very transparent numbers here. Can you
Mm-hmm.
give me the 12-week? So we think about the quarter, the past quarter, right? Past 90
Mm-hmm.
days. Can you
Yeah.
give me the 12-week sales data on
Mm-hmm.
our product line per SKU, per store, right? Obviously, whether you're talking to a buyer who manages one store or multiple stores, that's different. But per SKU, per store, per week. And typically, what that'll look like, again, if you've got that good relationship with the buyer, they'll show it to you in an Excel doc. It's literally like,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you have 4 SKUs. It's the 4 SKUs in the rows, and then you've got a column for each week 1 through 12, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a number in each cell, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I sold 3 of the purple thing on week
Mm-hmm.
1, and I sold 4 of the black
Mm-hmm.
thing and 1 of the white thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we really want to dig into that data of how much is our product moving, right? The velocity
Moving.
of it. Okay, so unit sales per store per week, right? That's our velocity. And then I also
Mm-hmm.
want to know how effective promotions are for your product line. So if you do any sort of promotion, right, you put it on sale. Maybe you're coming in and doing an activation. Maybe you are, in the food industry, we do a lot around staff education, right? Maybe we're coming in and we're like teaching staff how to use the product. Maybe we've got a
Mm-hmm.
merchandising team that's doing a push that week, whatever it is. Maybe we're running
Mm-hmm.
digital ads to drive in-store
Mm-hmm.
sales. When we run promotions, what is the
Mm-hmm.
lift that we see in sales after running that promo? And so I want to know those two things, right? What are my expected sales? And when we do promotions, and like which
What is the
specific
lift?
promotions are we doing? What is this
Mm-hmm.
increase in sales that we can expect to see?
And why does that matter to a
Yeah,
buyer?
great question. It matters because at the end of the day, we need this product to move.
Mm-hmm.
We need it to
Okay.
sell. So if we think about a store, right? I think about
Mm-hmm.
Sephora, or I think about Whole
Yeah.
Foods, or I think about Target,
Mm-hmm.
and we think
Mm-hmm.
about every spot on the shelf being a little
Cost.
piece of real estate that
Mm-hmm.
has to
Mm-hmm.
make money. Literally, that like 3-inch product, that
Yeah,
like slot on the
that's
shelf
true.
has to make money for the buyer,
That's true. That is so true.
right? Because they literally, like, running a store is very
Yeah,
expensive. Retail
very
margins are
expensive.
super, profitability margins so thin, right? So we
Yeah.
need every single product to pull its weight on the shelf.
Mhm. Wow. Phew. This is what I needed to
It's
hear,
hard.
because it's hard, but then also for my people, the category is so saturated in the
Yeah.
beauty, the
Yeah.
wellness industry is so saturated. And it takes me to my experience this
Mhm.
weekend. My sister and I, in our true sisterhood fashion, we walked
Yep.
into Sephora. I remember when I immigrated into this country, I loved Sephora because Sephora was a store where I could go and discover new products. I came into this country in 2014, so we're talking
Yeah.
about 11 years ago. 11 years later, my experience, the Sephora that I walked into, was crowded. I was overstimulated. I was like, what is going on? Do you know what I saw? I saw big brands that had big
Yep.
end caps. They had really big shelf cards, lots of
Yep.
facings. But to me, I know how the big brands play. But my concern was the founder that is emerging, that founder that is trying to break through the category. How do they win in such an environment?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't even find, like, I use the skin
Mm-hmm.
tint I use is by Amicole. I love her products, but I could barely find
Yeah.
that product. So how do they win? How do they survive? How, what matters in such an
It's
environment?
it's really hard. So I'll just say that,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is really hard when you are a
Mm-hmm.
smaller brand competing
Mm-hmm.
in an environment where you are going head to head with these, you know,
Big
$500 million
brands.
brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say you are an emerging brand and you have a sales and marketing budget of $25,000 a year, right?
Yep.
And you're like, that's how much money I have to
Mm-hmm.
play around with sales and marketing. And you're competing with a brand who has a budget of $25 million a year. It's just hard, right? Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just establish that.
That's true.
It's hard.
It's hard. And that's the same thing I told my sister. I was like, it's so hard for brands that are trying to break through. But I want to hear
Okay.
your answer. But from my perspective as a strategist, I literally told her that the only way for these brands to win is to love on the customer that is coming on the website. Like if they can create one brand fan and multiply that to 1,000, it's the only way to
Yeah.
win.
Yeah. So that ties directly into what I was going to say. In Retail Ready, we
Mhm.
preach the right people, right channel philosophy. And
Yeah.
this is the idea that you, especially as an early stage brand, you've got to go
Yes.
really deep on a specific target audience and
Yeah.
the problem that you're solving for them and the emotional connection they feel with your brand, right? And once
Yes.
we can identify that, right? And here we're not talking
Mhm.
about demographics, right? Like I don't,
No,
we're talking about the
the
psychographics. Yeah,
psychology.
exactly. So I don't
Yeah.
care if it's that like
Mhm.
30-year-old white lady or a 45-year-old Asian man or a 98-year-old black grandma, right? Like I don't care.
Mhm.
We're talking about the
Mhm.
emotional connection they have with
Yeah.
your brand. So
Yeah.
at the beginning, we get really crystal clear on who that is. And then
Yes.
we find the channels where they are already shopping for products like yours.
Mhm.
And then we realize we do kind of like an assessment here of can we be profitable in those channels, right? So,
Yes.
where are people looking for products like yours? And how can we get
Mhm.
in front of them in an affordable, profitable way, right? So, Maureen, it could be, oh my gosh, like my consumer is scrolling TikTok at night and they're buying cosmetics on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be my consumer is turning to Chat GPT for health advice and
Yes. And then
solving, their health problems online and looking to buy.
yeah.
They'll click through and they'll buy direct from
Mhm.
your website if you are solving that specific problem that they have. In
Mhm.
grocery, we think, oftentimes people are like, well, Allie, like my nut butter doesn't solve a problem. It's just delicious. Right. And I'm like, okay, maybe. Right. So, like, if people aren't online Googling, like, let me
Mhm.
solve my allergies with this nut butter. I mean, they might
Mhm.
be, but unless it's like a very niche product, that's
Yeah.
where again, like most people are buying nut butter at the grocery store. They're not buying it
No.
direct from brands' websites. I can't tell you the last time I
Yes.
bought a nut butter like direct to
Yeah.
consumer. Right? It's
Consumable.
just not happening.
Mhm.
I mean, during COVID, I guess,
Mhm.
when we were all online. But typically with
Mhm.
grocery, we see more of it like they might have product discovery online, but they are purchasing
Yes.
in store where they are buying $200 of grocery just in one fell swoop.
Mhm.
And so there, I would say, grocery or not, again, and like those brands that are looking to be in beauty categories, thinking about Sephora's,
Yes.
Ulta's, things like that. Where is your target audience shopping when they're not shopping at the big box stores? And how
Chances are high
online, right?
online.
For beauty, it's mostly
Mhm.
online.
Social.
Social. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And so
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
there places that let's go to those channels first, right? If we don't have that
Mhm.
$25 million marketing budget, I'm not going to go and
Mhm.
sell in Sephora. At least not
Yeah.
yet,
Yeah.
right?
That's true. That is so true. I know most of them listening to this, they'll be like, I'm already
Yeah.
on TikTok, I'm already on
Yep.
Instagram, I'm
I'm already
already on
doing all those
YouTube, I'm,
things.
I'm already there. But for me, my challenge would be, are you pouring into the person that has already
Yeah.
bought from you?
Right, right, cuz
Are you creating ambassadors? Are you
yeah.
building brand funds? Are you cultivating that community? Do you have a
Right.
movement?
Because typically what we see and what I think happens in beauty in particular is you get one-time
Mhm.
purchasers on social, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
they
it.
buy once
Yeah.
and because I get it, right? Like I know that consumer behavior. They're scrolling and scrolling. And
Mhm.
also I think beauty's
Mhm.
challenging where people are you either are very brand loyal or you're the type of person who
Yes.
likes to experiment and try new things.
And it's a very it's the category is heavy
Yeah.
trial. Let me
Sure.
experience. I like it. I walk out.
Totally, right? And so
Yeah.
what would that stepping stone be like in retail that's not the Sephora, the Ulta, I think it depends
Hmm.
on obviously like what the product is, what the category is, but like where are places that people are buying products that aren't those big box stores? In grocery, it's a little easier because we're like, okay, we can do independent stores, we can do, smaller
Hmm.
things, but it might be like
You can do the same thing in the same category. You can find like independent beauty
totally
stores or super
right.
niche spas. Those cute little boutiques that you go to and your audience would
Yeah.
frequent there.
It's a
That's a good
great
place to
stepping
start, in
stone.
my
Yeah,
experience.
and then you're not
Hmm.
competing
Hmm.
with the like big,
Yeah,
big brands, and they're like
yeah.
literally they're like branded mirrors and the lights and the
Mhm.
colors and the inflatable end caps, and I mean it is
Mhm.
just bonkers.
It's insane. I was like,
Yeah,
what happened to me discovering a new and
yeah,
unique product? And I was like, I'm so sorry, challenge emerging brands, but also I was like, this is such a great opportunity to build a movement because now how I am seeing the shopping behavior shift is if I'm going to Sephora, I'm going to buy a brand I have loved
right,
online.
right.
I'm not going to discover, I'm going to pick my cult like favorite because either my influencer told me or people are raving about me. So if I can do a lot of the heavy lifting up front, then you'll get the
Totally. And
sale.
I think it's really important to think about how once you're in retail, right? The
Hmm.
we were talking about this, like the storytelling has to evolve for the shelf space and it literally has to shrink to fit the
Hmm.
space, right? So if you're
Hmm.
online, you've got time, right? You've got like
Yes.
people are I mean, I know it doesn't seem like much time, but right, you've got
Hmm.
short form video content. Maybe you get them on your email list. You've got like a caption where literally it's a short caption, but you're literally writing about
Hmm.
your product and people can read about it.
Hmm.
And once you're
Hmm.
on shelf, you get a glance if you're lucky,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
storytelling on the retail shelf it's a whole different thing, right? Like you've got like
Hmm.
3 seconds to capture someone's attention. And
Hmm.
it's hard with beauty products, right? Like people want to
It's hard.
know
Wellness
wellness
products
products,
too.
even food, right? Like it's
Hmm.
consumer packaged goods,
I think
right?
it's hard.
Period.
It's every packaged good is
Right.
hard.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
people, when founders pour their passion into their products, they want to share their
Hmm.
story with folks. I get it. I
Hmm.
totally understand. And it's
Hmm.
simply easier to do online when you have that.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think you have people's attention longer online than you
Hmm.
do in store.
Hmm.
Do you think
That
that's
is
true?
true. But now
Dare I say that?
I think that is true. Yes, I think that is true. And now I want to
Yeah.
ask you this question. Like, what is the difference between storytelling
Yeah.
online and storytelling in retail? And how does
Yeah.
that evolve? Because what you said, I personally think
Yeah.
it's true.
Right. And I don't think I've ever
Mhm.
said that before. And I'm really cautious. Let me say I'm really cautious about saying this
Yeah.
because I don't
Mhm.
want listeners to think like, especially, I'll say especially if any food and beverage brands are listening to this.
Mhm.
I don't want you to think
Mhm.
that online sales is easy. It's
It's
not
not
easy,
easy. That
right?
I can tell it's
And
not easy.
I think one of the mistakes that we make is we skip that right people, right channel philosophy, right? So if you are listening to this, you really have to do an honest evaluation of your own product line and your
Yes.
own target audience and their consumer behavior, right? Like there's no one size fits all here. And we have to be really
That is it.
clear on how expensive and how challenging it
It
is
is.
to shift consumer behavior, right? So I'll just give an extreme example here, but like, let's say you're an ice
Mhm.
cream brand listening, you're not
Mhm.
going to have much luck selling your ice cream direct to consumer from your website. That's just not how
Correct.
people buy ice cream,
That's
right? Then we're talking about
mhm.
dry ice shipping, overnight shipping fees. Like it's
Yeah.
just, there's one brand that I can think of that sells ice cream direct to consumer and has totally rocked it.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mhm.
And they have
Yeah.
a lot of money to like play around with and do
Mhm.
that. So we got to be really
Mhm.
clear that like um even though Maureen, you and I are both saying that I think in some ways more you get more face time and more like storytelling time with your audience online than you do in retail. It doesn't make it, the go-to channel or easier in
No.
many ways.
It actually is not. And because you get more face time, it requires a lot more from
Yes,
you.
yes,
It requires a lot more
100%.
investment from you, because if I can spend time navigating and studying your website, as a founder, you have to invest in the psychology of the buyer from a navigation
Yeah.
standpoint. You have to invest in copy. You have to invest in user experience. You have to invest in retention. That's a lot
Product
of work.
photography,
So in a
video, you know,
keeping
all
me
this stuff.
there and grabbing my
Yeah.
attention. It's a
Yes.
lot of work, but like with everything in life, the more work you put in, the greater
Yeah.
the ROI. Because my fear with retail, which has always been my fear, even when worked on the manufacturer side, is a great product can sit on shelf, but if there's no
Right.
shelf talker,
Okay.
there's nothing that brings my attention, I'll
Of
pass
course.
it by.
Of
And then a brand that has like a multi-million dollar budgeting because of the brand awareness will get my
Of
sale.
course, right? And you say that, Maureen, as someone I know, like you're a conscious consumer who's trying to find new
Very.
brands, right? Like
Yes.
you and I, I'm sure we like go in retail and like it's a whole like discovery experience. So think about that like average
Mhm.
mom, she's got like two kids in the shopping cart and like, a coffee in one hand. Like she is not like
Yeah.
there to discover new products.
No,
So it's
she
really
is
hard to
not.
capture, her attention and to get her to try something new or change her behavior, right? So we just have
Mhm.
to know
Mhm.
the challenges that
You-
we're facing in either channel here. And so Maureen, I'm so
Yes.
glad that you mentioned how online you have to invest in a different type of way, because
Mhm.
oftentimes I do hear brands say, well, I'll make more money online, the margins are better, like I can talk to my consumer, I can like story tell in that way, but then they're not good
Mhm.
digital marketers. So it's like,
Yes.
choose your hard here. Like retail's
Mhm.
hard and online's
Mhm.
hard. Okay, so
Yeah.
I want to go back to your question here about the storytelling
Mhm.
in retail. And
Mhm.
I want to, I'm always bringing the wholesale buyer lens back into the conversation.
Yeah. And I love that perspective because it just helps us have such a
Okay,
good
great.
dialogue here.
So
Mhm.
there's two different places that we're selling when we're going into retail. First, we're selling to the
Mhm.
wholesale buyer just to land on the
Mhm.
shelf. And then we're selling to the consumer off of the shelf. And so we use very different storytelling techniques based on which step of the sales process we're doing. And so one of the
Mhm.
mistakes that I see founders make, and I alluded to this, we talked about it a bit at the beginning, is in their sales pitch to the wholesale buyer, they're using the same storytelling techniques Same storytelling principles that they're using when they're talking direct to their consumer online. And that doesn't work. And let's be honest here. I mean, it's changing in our industry, but by and large, those wholesale buyers, those decision makers, like especially in corporate and like big things, they're like middle-aged white dudes who like really do not care about your like line of tampons. They don't even get it, right? So we have to be really clear on who we're talking to and how we are shaping the story that solves whatever problem they're trying to solve, right? So again, step number one there with that wholesale buyer, we're storytelling through data again, right? Velocity, lift after promo, shelf life, UPCs, right? Like we're storytelling about sales success. And then you land the account, that's great. Then we get on shelf. And here, as we're storytelling on the shelf, especially like we're hoping here that we're in independent stores, we're in smaller scale stores, right? There's more room for you on the shelf, right? I think about what does that consumer need to know in 3 seconds to capture their attention, right? So like what's the emotional hook? What's like one crystal clear outcome of purchasing your product? What's like one very strong visual hierarchy on your packaging? Are you using shelf talkers to capture the attention? Are you on sale and there's like a little sale tag there, right? Like how are we drawing in that shopper's attention maybe from 10 feet away, from 5 feet away, from 2 feet away? What do they need to know about our brand to make a really quick product decision?
So basically, the storytelling evolves based on the buying triggers. So the buying triggers of a buyer are completely different from the buying triggers of a consumer.
Yes.
Okay, now the big question here is what's the difference between brands that are actually in stores and brands that want to be in stores?
Yeah, the brands that want to be, or like the brands that like where the buyers are like vying for their products in the stores. The second one?
Yes, buyers of the second one. Yeah.
So this is a good question. I wish more founders asked themselves that, right? So like being in store, in my perspective, it just means that the buyer is willing to give you a shot. That wholesale buyer is willing to like give you a trial on the shelf. But what we actually want is to be wanted, right? Like being wanted in stores means that you are earning the reorders, right? That you are getting those reorders. And again, we've spent this whole episode talking about why that's so important, right? So being a wanted brand, in my opinion, means you're not just taking up shelf space. You're actually like creating a movement, right? And this is what you talked about, Maureen, right? That like they have, these brands have a pull to them, right? They've got strong sell-through. They make the buyers look really good because the buyers are hitting their category goals. Those brands are communicating well. They're showing up in marketing. They're, I mean, I'm like, they're creating a community around a product line and they're bringing that community in store.
That's it. That's the answer. And that gives founders the next thing they need to do, because there's so much hype around, I want to get into Ulta, I want to get into Target, I want to get into this. Of course, that's your goal. But I am very like straight to the point. You cannot skip the steps.
No.
Right? And your step right now would be build that pull through. That way, even your website is already overwhelming you.
Right.
Before.
Totally.
Right? Like build it. It helps you. It'll also help you not only from a retail standpoint, but also from selling your brand. A lot of my people want to build legacy brands to sell it to a big brand that it can expand, right?
Yeah.
And some people saying that being wanted. I'm like, just want this product, because the minute they want you, like the world is your oyster.
Totally. Like we want to be able to build a brand that has such hype around it that buyers are coming to you. That those wholesale buyers are like, oh, that's the next big thing and I need it on my shelf.
I love that. And it, how would you build the first year
Yeah.
roadmap for a brand entering retail? What would that look like from
Yeah.
launch day to the
Yeah.
first year on
Okay, great. So
shelf?
we're looking at like 12 months in retail. So
Yes. Yeah.
let's start even pre-launch, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that I would do is get super, super clear on my financials, right? Like your
Mm-hmm.
financial, you will like live and die by your financials. If it doesn't like work out on paper, it's not going to work out
Mm-hmm.
in reality, right? So we tighten our margins, we like get really clear on how we are going to make this product and sell it at a
Mm-hmm.
price where people will purchase it and a price
Mm-hmm.
that makes us profitable, right? Okay,
Okay.
so that's what I do pre-launch. I like get my financials in order.
Mm-hmm.
I finalize my pitch materials, right? The line sheet
Mm-hmm.
that we were talking about, the pitch, like literally what I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to say in my pitch, and I would map
Mm-hmm.
out my promotional calendar, right? Like what am
Mm-hmm.
I going to do in the next 12 months in terms of sales and
Yeah.
marketing tactics to create that hype, to create that momentum around my product line. Okay, so that's like the pre-work that I'm doing. And we're just assuming that you've
Mm-hmm.
got the product dialed in, all the product development stuff, all that. Okay, launch month comes around. We are getting the product on the shelves with really strong merchandising, right? We're providing those shelf
Mm-hmm.
talkers, we're doing staff education, we are doing the like demoing or any sort of like consumer facing touch point in retail that we can. We're training
Mm-hmm.
team members on the messaging, right? We
Mm-hmm.
are making sure that the
Mm-hmm.
first 30 days in your new accounts
Making stuff.
are like super dialed in. We want
Yeah.
reorders right off the bat. So then I focus that
Mm-hmm.
first quarter, the first 90 days, I'm driving velocity, right? With promotions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm checking in on those retail accounts, making sure that they're
Mm-hmm.
reordering. I'm asking them like what they need, right? Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
do you need new shelf talkers? Do you need me
Mm-hmm.
to provide more end cap like promotional stuff? Do you want me to come in and do education? Do you like, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
do email campaigns, we're doing geo targeted ads driving traffic in store, right? First 90 days we're
Mm-hmm.
going hard on the
Mm-hmm.
reorders. And I
Yeah.
want to be clear here, Maureen, I haven't said anything yet about adding more stores, right? We're going to like
Yeah.
launch in a dozen stores, right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure listeners are like, that's too small. Like, that's not enough.
It's
It's big,
big.
like slow your roll.
That stage is big.
Right? Okay, so we're really driving velocity and proving traction in our first
Yep.
dozen stores. We move
Yes.
into like the Q2 there. We're analyzing sell through, our reorder rates. And here we are doubling down on what's working, right? Here's where we get to
Mm-hmm.
analyze okay, we did 20% off at this store and we saw our
Mm-hmm.
sales double. We did
Mm-hmm.
$1 off at this store and we didn't
Mm-hmm.
really see a lift in sales. Okay, so we know like the 20% off works better than the $1 off and we can
Mm-hmm.
afford either. So like, let's make sure we're doing
Yes.
the 20% off or whatever it is, right? We're doubling, we're analyzing sell through and we're doubling down on what's working.
Mm-hmm.
Then Q3, here we are like day, what would that be? 180 or so.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's working,
Mm-hmm.
let's pitch to more retailers, right? Like we've got that
Ah.
solid foundation here. We're hitting our
Yes.
sales goals. And that gives us the
Yep.
green light to pitch to more retailers. I do not want people to
Gotcha.
pitch to new retailers if you're not hitting your sales goals in your current accounts.
Yeah. Love that. And I don't,
Yeah.
because I know we're coming up on time. How do you sustain year two? Because now you've
Yep.
told them, like, yes, you've
Yeah.
laid the foundation, you
Yeah.
can pitch them to the next retail. How do you sustain
Yeah.
year two?
So I think, again, for me, it's about growing at the pace that is sustainable for you. It is going
Okay. So you have to
deep
define
in
that.
your
Okay.
own
Mm-hmm.
region,
Mm-hmm.
connecting with your consumers, watching your
Yeah.
cash
I can
flow. I
see
mean,
that.
that's the biggest thing. Like,
Yeah.
we don't want
Yeah.
you to get into a place where you've got a big purchase order and you literally don't have the
Mm-hmm.
cash to create the
Yeah.
product to fulfill it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think year
Mm-hmm.
2 is all about like, again, sustaining the accounts that you already have
Okay.
keeping an eye on cash, and being really, really honest about when you're ready to add more retailers. Because I think,
Got it.
Maureen, like people
I
just
love
chase more retailers. They think that like more doors,
Yes.
more doors, more doors. And I'm actually going to be
Mm-hmm.
here saying like more velocity, more velocity. Like we have to sell in the retailers that we are in. Otherwise,
Yeah.
adding more doors is just going to exacerbate your sales problems.
Yes. That is so true.
So go deep.
That is, thank you. Thank you for echoing this. I absolutely loved this conversation because it's everything I think about, but I'm not into retail. My messaging is totally different, positioning, marketing. But just hearing you say the things I see on a day-to-day basis is just phenomenal.
I love that we're so aligned on this stuff.
I know, I love that. So now, as we're wrapping up this podcast episode, I typically ask a closing signature question because I'm all about positioning and messaging. And this signature question is, if your brand outlived you, what message would it say to the world?
It's going to sound cheesy, but I'm going to say it anyways. So if Food Biz outlived me, my message is you don't have to hustle harder. You just need a plan.
And why does that matter? And why is that important to you?
I want founders to feel confident and not chaotic, right? I want them to trust themselves in sales conversations. I want them to understand that strategy isn't cold or corporate or not for them, right? It's how you build a sustainable business. I think we get so wrapped up, it's not our fault. We live in a capitalist society here. We get so wrapped up in, I just need to work harder. I need to do more. I need to hustle. And then my dream will come alive. And yeah, the first few years are freaking hustle and hard work. There's like no denying that. And it's okay to build a strategy that works for you.
I love that because that question always ends up being the theme of the podcast. It was you talked about processes, the foundation, getting things right, and it aligns with your message. And I just love branding because that is what branding is.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for just creating space for me and for my listeners and for everything that you do for the industry and the category. Where can people find you?
My pleasure. I would love your listeners to come say hi to me on Instagram. I'm at Food Biz Wiz, and that's where send me a DM. I love following new brands, so please come send me a DM at Food Biz Wiz. I'll follow you back, or you can find me at foodbizwiz.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. Absolutely love this, my friend.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on Build an Obsession brand. If you're relying on passion alone to grow your brand, you're flying blind because real success takes strategy. If today's episode hit home, share it with another brand builder who needs to hear this. My mission? Helping emerging brands get the right recipe for success. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on Instagram at Maureen Mwangi Official. Until next time, build with precision because big brands aren't built by accident.